I'm Tom Vessel, and welcome to the ranking of the top 80 characters from X-Men United. Some of you might be saying, have we seen this before? And the answer to that is yes. You don't have to watch this if you've already watched the other 8 videos that I put this into. And why am I putting it into one big gigantic video now? Well, 2 reasons. 1, because I thought you might want to see them all in order. And 2, because when we originally did the first ones, it was right before Dice Tower East, and there was some wonky thing that Final Cut Pro did when it exported them and put some mistakes and errors in the editing of them. What I said is right, but either way. Here we go, taking those 96 videos that I did, little videos, and putting them together into one. Are you sure you don't want to watch Avengers Endgame instead? But anyway, we're going to take a look here at these. This is my personal favorites. From 80 to 1, I'm not trying to say that they're the best heroes per se, although I think the stronger a hero is, the more I tend to like them usually. But these are my favorites. Also, this is only the stuff from X-Men United. Putting it together with the original stuff would have taken, well, the rest of my life. So these are just the X-Men United stuff rated against each other, so we better get started. Number 80 was unfortunately a really easy choice for me, and that here is Deadpool. And it's mostly just because of the stupidity of the character. I mean, he's definitely one of the best fighters, so many ways for him to attack, not very good at helping people. He has all his cards are special, with the exception of the single wild and double wild. They're all special. But I hate these breaking the fourth wall cards, where you draw the top 2 cards from this Deadpool Chaos deck, which could be anything. Anything. I mean, just insanely weird and crazy cards. Like even, for example, this one here. The last player to attend a pool party draws a card. Anyone who's never been to a pool party takes 1 damage. I really dislike that sort of thing. And just the rest of his cards are kind of cool, but happily, Lady Deadpool has kind of the same effect without the idiocy of this breaking the fourth wall stuff, so she's going to be higher on the list. But yeah, when I was making the list, this was the first one I knew that would be in the bottom, and yes, all the way down to number 80. Then we come to number 79 here, Sunfire. I've never really been a huge fan of Sunfire in the comics, but that doesn't really affect my ratings here for this. The reason I'm not a big fan of Sunfire is because his stats are not particularly good across the board. They're okay, and he has a lot of move combo cards. The problem I have is his specials. I just don't like them. First of all, he has the Solar Fire card, which does 1 damage to everything in an adjacent location, and also gets rid of the people that you need to rescue there. If there's a lot of thugs, that's great, but it's very specific, and it has no icons on the bottom of the card. I just don't find that very useful. And then this one here, which says he gets a fighting token for each location with nobody at it, with no civilians and no thugs. You know how rare that is in my games? There's almost always somebody at a location. So that it seems like, oh wow, if you clear out a lot of locations, it's powerful, and it could be. But I just don't find that interesting. This is just not a character that I like to use much at all, which is why he's near the bottom. Number 78 is Angel. Kind of a cool figure. I like how Angel looks. Although in the comics, I mean, they definitely turned him into Archangel because Angel flies. That's not really that exciting. But his cards here, he has very good movement. Some of the best movement in, not some of the best movement in the game, but decent movement in the game, especially since he can move to any location with these attack from above cards. He has double movement cards that really helps. And he's more heroic than most of the characters, especially since his Worthington Industry resources, because he's rich, that's his superpower, by the way. He can distribute 2, of these heroic tokens from the pool amongst any number of heroes. Well, that's kind of cool, but it's not enough, especially with this attack from above. I don't mind this move to any location and defeat 2 thugs there. That could be really handy. But again, I don't think it's worth then having a blank bottom of the card. Those just really bug me. I don't like using them in games. They're like a lack of teamwork, so that's why he's near the bottom for me. Warpath probably has his uses, and again, this is kind of a personal list for me. I'm not saying he's one of the weaker characters. I just don't find him very fun or interesting to play. He has a couple extra wilds, and these are good wilds. The super human physical abilities, which basically says, you know, not only does he get a wild, but it's an extra attack and draw a card. That's pretty awesome. But his acute senses here, where you can move and also look at the top card, the master plan deck, and put it back on top. That's cool, except half the time you look at it right before it happens. You might be able to go do something. You might be able to say, okay, if Warpath is first in a round, that's better. I don't find that to be particularly exciting. Again, he has only a couple single icons, a lot of double icons. His stats are not bad. I mean, they're not great either. They're just kind of okay across the board. To me, he's just not very exciting to play, which puts him near the bottom of the list. 76 is Feral, and I have a hard time maybe explaining why Feral's down so far on the list, because again, her stats are not terrible. Her attack, she has these claws and teeth card, which, you know, lets you move and do a double attack, which I like. Unfortunately, the double attack doesn't pass on to anybody else. Her acute senses, if she's going to take damage or be assigned to crisis tokens, you can flip this card face down to ignore it. I don't know if I like that. Yes, you can ignore the crisis token, but having a face down card doesn't help the teammate. She provides teammates with some movement and some heroic tokens. These here aren't particularly bad, but yeah, just she doesn't, again, I have to rank these people from 1 to 80, and Feral just doesn't really excite me that much. Also, I don't find her an interesting character at all in the X-Men universe, but that doesn't really affect this. Now, this one is a surprise even to me to have Rogue so low on the list. And for two reasons. One, I like her as a character, but her abilities, her cards, I thought would be fantastic, the special ones. We'll get to those in a second. She has an extra wild, so that's not bad. But once you take that wild away, her stats aren't particularly good, and she has several cards with only one icon on the bottom. But let's take a look at these two cards. So, Power Absorption here. Use the action symbols at the bottom of another Powers card in a storyline, then turn that card face down. That's not bad, actually. I think that's better than this one. Use a special effect of another player's card, and then turn that card face down. Now, here's the thing. Both these cards could be amazing, and they tend to be the kind of power that I like. I like copying other cards. I've just had the worst luck with them. It just never seems to work out right. They come, and you're like, well, that power is not exactly the way I want to use it. Don't get me wrong. You mix her with someone like Phoenix or someone who has a lot of symbols on the bottom of the card, and Rogue was probably amazing. And I could imagine that of all the ones I have this low, this would be one that people disagree with me on. And maybe I come back in a year or two and Rogue has moved higher on the list. But for now, she's just down here near the bottom. This is one of my top characters in the Marvel Universe, if not my favorite character, Iceman. Cool model here. Completely translucent, although I don't know how we're going to do painting of him. Maybe put a little bit of white on him to show some ice. I'm not sure. I'm not a painter. But his cards are fine. So when you look at Iceman's stats, well, yeah, I mean, I kind of gave him not too great of stats, but he has more rescuing than most people do. So that is a benefit. And he has several double stat cards. The problem is, I really like his organic ice body, which says you can't take any damage till the beginning of your next turn. That's fine. That's pretty powerful, although every time I play it, the villain doesn't do damage. Iceman does it to somebody else. This one here, which it puts a stun token on a villain or henchman in your location. Next turn, their BAM is canceled and the token's discarded. That's such a cool card. I just wish it was tied with a move on the bottom. So many times I get this card, I want to play it, but the previous card doesn't have a move, or you're struggling to get a move because you need to move to where the villain is. Hey, if the villain lands on you, this is an amazing card. But this rescuing at the bottom doesn't really jive with the top of the card. And almost I wish it would, because you feel like Iceman would have an ice slide. Which the other Iceman does from First Class, and you'll notice that the First Class Iceman is higher on the list than this one. But the idea of Iceman works, but I don't find him to be as cool in action as the cards make me feel like he could be. I have mixed feelings about Bob. I mean, on one hand, you know, the Bob in the comic is pretty funny. He's an agent of Hydra that's basically a straight man and for Deadpool. But I don't know that he needed his own character, let alone become a villain. But we'll talk about that on the villain list. He has a lot of specials here that you'll notice. He has more specials than many other people. And his specials can be really good, except they always have some sort of cost to them. Here, this is a wild. Well, 2 more wilds. But then I draw a master plan and place it face down, or give a crisis token each hero if there are effects in the game that use them. I hate that. I don't think it's worth the extra stuff. And that's kind of the way a lot of his stuff is. Like here, he gets a wild token, but everyone else has to discard an action token if they have any. Now, you can kind of set that up, and you can work with these, which is why he's not at the bottom of the list. Even his negative card here, Runaway, I think this one's actually a good card, because if a villain ends your movement, you must move to the next clockwise location, unless you're trying to kill the villain and punch the villain. He also has single stats at the bottom of all his cards. So I think he's kind of included in the game like, ha ha ha, nobody's worse than Bob. No, actually Deadpool is worse than Bob. But he's still not fantastic, which is why he's in this bottom 10. Alpha Flight. All right, so Alpha Flight, you're going to find they're not in the top tier for me. But Puck is the lowest of Alpha Flight. So his starting card here, as long as it's face up in the storyline, you can ignore damage dealt by a henchman each villain turn. That's much better if there's a lot of henchmen in the game, but most of the villains don't have henchmen. I will give Puck, model-wise, one of the best in the game. I actually think Puck's a cool character. He's my second Alpha Flight person after Box, who, incidentally, isn't in X-Men United. This is not bad, his acrobatic fighting style. I do want to talk a little bit about this one here. So this is the Alpha Flight card, which gives you a token for each face-up Alpha Flight card in the storyline. So if you play with a full team of Alpha Flight, these cards can be pretty powerful, except there's only one in each, unlike, say, the Fantastic Four, who have 2 of them. And so I played with full teams of Alpha Flight. I played with Alpha Flight a lot because I wanted to see Alpha Flight do well. They just don't come across as strongly as I'd like them to be. And so that, coupled with Puck's just okay stats, I mean, he has a decent fighting, and he has an extra wild, so, I mean, that's kind of cool. And this swapping a threat card with one in an adjacent location, that in the right circumstance, that can be pretty cool. I like that. But I don't know. He just doesn't excite me. And I'm like, oh, I'm playing with Puck. Give me one of the X-Men instead. And finally, rounding out our top or bottom 10 here, another Alpha Flight member, North Star. So North Star, the positive thing for North Star is his speed. Good speed, and his starting hand card here, as long as it's face up in the storyline, when you do an action, you can take another action hero with you. When I play with North Star, and I play with North Star almost more than any other character, because again, I was trying to get Alpha Flight to work. He's my starting person, because I'll take him, grab someone, and run to another location. But then what? And that's the problem. He has lots of movement. That's good to give people movement, but he doesn't seem to have a lot else. His concussive blasts are not bad. I don't dislike these. You know, you have 2 attacks, split as you want, and you're in adjacent locations. That's good, and that's why I like him better than Puck. And then he also has one of these Alpha Flight cards that never really takes off. Yeah, so he's cool. He's decent, and he almost made it out of the bottom 10. But I like 70 characters better than him. Now we have Psylocke. She's the first in today's 10 at number 70. Psylocke has some decent movement. We'll take a look at her cool sword miniature. That's kind of nice. My problem with Psylocke is her special cards. That's why she's lower on the list. Psylocke has this add a stun token to a villain or henchman, which is a great card. The ability is great, but it has an attack at the bottom, and I would really prefer to have this with a move so that you can get to the villain. And her telepathy card, which lets you swap this with a previous card in the story. That's great. Swap it with a double wild or something. But then it only has a movement here at the bottom, which makes it a little less exciting. And I guess that's what it is. I don't think Psylocke's a bad character. She's just not a particularly exciting one. When I get the chance to play her, I'm like, oh, okay. And that's why she's number 70. Coming in at 69 is Cannonball. Now, Cannonball is an interesting character in the Marvel Universe, although his power is it's such an odd power. He's basically invulnerable when he flies around, and they kind of try to do that with his specials here. So, for example, move, he gets a move token, and you can't take any damage till the beginning of your next turn. Okay, that's fine. And then he has move, and this turn, when you do a move, you get an extra attack token. Great, but he has one, so he's going to get one attack token when he does this. If you have other move tokens, you might be able to use it and get a bunch of attack tokens. It's possible to line this up to be amazing. But I think Cannonball's best if you play him with somebody else who also has move. And if you have two characters with a lot of move, then I feel like the balance of your team is a little off. So that's kind of why he's down here. I mean, again, when it comes to movement, he is one of the best in the game for that, which makes sense with his powers. And so his character, which I don't know why I still had Psylocke there from the last one, but his character is also a pretty cool miniature here. I really like this one, and this is one that will look pretty good painted. Okay, Banshee, finally he has the card that I want. The one that lets you attach a stun token to a villain or henchman, and their BAM is canceled, and he has the movement on the bottom. That's the combo I want. And he also has an attack here with a double attack in an adjacent location. Although, you know, sometimes I want that combo together. Banshee's fine, and this is kind of where I put the fine characters. I don't know, he just, when I played him, I was like, yeah, I enjoyed him, but then I forgot about him completely, which is probably why he glided down to this section here. He always did have a weird ability that he glides, but anyhow, his model's okay, but definitely one that needs to be painted. So do you want a jack of all trades and master of none? Well, then you're gonna get Havoc. Although, without these cards, also Havoc has the very special ability that he cannot be damaged by one of Cyclops' first class abilities. I don't know, it was an odd thing. We'll get to that when we get to Cyclops' first class. I think I would have Havoc actually higher if these cards had any icons on the bottom. I don't mind doing 3 damage to an adjacent location. I just don't know if I like doing that at the expense of giving the next character nothing. Here, getting a move, getting an attack token, not taking any damage at the beginning of your next turn, that's pretty solid. And he has kind of a nice array here. Heroic, attacking, some really strong attacks, but they don't help the opponents. So he's another character that's fine. This just really bugs me to have those there. All right, now we have Cloak, and I'm going to spoil the next one. It's Dagger, because Dagger and Cloak go together. By the way, I thought it was kind of Cloak has such an awesome figure, and Dagger is such an awesome figure, and they're supposed to kind of go together. I just thought it was sad that they didn't make a change in her base so you could put them together. I thought that would be a cool, they have that kind of cool pose that they can have. But Cloak is a cool figure. Here's the deal. You have to use Cloak and Dagger together. If you do not, then I would rank them almost like 79 and 78. Honestly, they would be that low. Cloak has this Dark Force teleportation, which when you play it, you can use move to move to any location. That's great. If Dagger's in the location, she can move with you, which is neat. So whenever he moves, as long as his card isn't turned over, he can go anywhere. The problem is I don't know that his other cards are great. Dagger can draw up to 3 if she's in your location. Okay, fine. And Dark Force channeling, it sounds fun. Like you take a henchman and Cloak out of play, you put them back in, and then do 2 damage to that henchman. I like that. But so few of the villains use henchmen these days, so he's very specific. That's the thing with Cloak. If you're playing a villain with henchmen, and you're also playing with Dagger, then it works together as a combo. But if you're not doing that, then he's just not very useful. Without Dagger, I'm not using Cloak. And it's going to be the same way with her. But I like the art on the cards, I like the model, I like the idea, but yeah, they're lower because of this. So Dagger is here right next to Cloak because, again, you got to kind of use them together. I have her higher than Cloak, even though her special ability is not as good. Her starting card is that as long as it's face up, if you start your turn with 2 or more cards in your hand, you can immediately do a free heroic action. That's not bad. I think I'd rather have the free heroic or move. They're both good. And then her card that works with Cloak is if Cloak's in her location, it benefits her. Benefits him, that he can draw 3 cards in his hand, the same card he has towards her. But other than that, she's by herself then. She can turn thugs into civilians and rescue them. She can hit 3 different targets in the location. That's pretty good. And her stats, there's a lot of heroic stuff with her stats. Her model's another one of the models that I really would like to be painted, because when it's not painted, it looks like she's wearing she's holding this big hair thing that you stick in your hair. But Yeah, I don't know. I like them both when you use them together, and I considered putting them in as a single character, because if you're not using if you're not going to use Cloak, then Dagger's less useful, and if you're not using Dagger, Cloak's a lot less useful. Now we move to the first of 4 Wolverines that X-Men United made. Yes, 4 out of 80 characters. 1/20th of this game is Wolverine. This one is Old Man Logan. Yes, I know he's technically Wolverine from an alternate universe who fought a bunch of Hulks. Yeah, so on. He's the only character who comes with a bottom of the deck card and also a starting card, but they kind of work together. His starting card is Retired. Retired gives you 2 fighting tokens, but as long as this card is face up in the storyline, you can't use fighting tokens to attack. Okay, that's fine. And then many of his cards, he has 4 Tired of Fighting cards in his deck. If it's face up, you get another fighting token. And then you can ignore a damage. And that's cool. And if you can get this Old Man Logan card out, you get 4 of those tokens, and then you flip Retired face down. Also, it's a wild. If you notice, though, other than his wild symbols, he has no attack. He has a lot of movement, a lot of single icons, and he has stars. So basically, the way you play him is you're trying to cycle through his deck to get to that Old Man Logan so that you can grab those tokens and throw them out. The problem is if sometimes Retired's flipped over early by the villain, which is really annoying because then all these Tired of Fighting cards don't work. And many times you don't get to that final card in your deck, which is also annoying. And I found that the idea of him's great. I have not yet pulled it off. But if you can get to the cards and you have a bunch of tokens, Old Man Logan's going to walk up to the villain and just shred them. Literally. But unfortunately, because it doesn't happen as much as I'd want it to, because of that, I just can't put him higher on the list at this point in time. So Gwenpool, which is probably a model a lot of people are going to love because it comes with this little land shark and she's carrying a bazooka. And Gwenpool, who I think singularly is, for me, the most annoying character in the Marvel comic universe. She's not as bad as Deadpool to play here, and she's not even part of the Deadpool set, but she's essentially that. She comes with Jeffrey the land shark. That's her one that she starts with. And if it's face up at the end of your turn, she can do a damage to a thug or henchman that she didn't damage this turn. Well, that's great for thugs, henchmen. That means you didn't hit them prior. So it's not a bad card. She has a lot of special cards. This flipping 2 cards in the storyline can be good or bad. The fact is, you have to do it. I don't know. There's no consequences in the fictional world. Not a fan of this one because you do 1 damage to everything in your location for each card you discard, but discarding is bad and it kills civilians. It can work, but and then this one here is the same one that Cloak has, where she can pull out and put back in, but again, there has to be henchmen for it to work. She's fine, and she's silly. She's not overly silly, which is why I have her ranked higher than Deadpool, but and her special cards are kind of cool. I like using them. But if you take her special cards out of the equation, her stats aren't particularly great, which is why she's lower on the list. I don't know why. I don't know if it's possible that my personal dislike for this annoying character in the Marvel Universe, I don't like Longshot, put him lower. I try not to let that affect me. Because Longshot does have really good special cards. So he has 2 special cards. One's the Healing Factor, which is a wild and lets him draw up to 3 cards, which of course means I draw this at the beginning of the game. But this card is amazing. Look at the top 3 cards of the Master Plan deck, then place them on the top in any order. We already talked about a character who can look at the top card. That's cool, but looking at the top 3, putting them any order you want, is a pretty powerful thing to be able to pull off. And I like that. Everyone knows what these cards are. You now know how to manipulate them. It's fantastic. The problem with him is that his stats aren't very interesting. He's one of the weakest attackers in the entire game, and the rest of his stats just don't get me excited. And maybe there's the character involved too, but that's why he's lower on the list for me at this point. But man, this probably manipulation is one of my favorite cards in the game. Apocalypse is a weird one for me because I think that he's probably a pretty powerful character, but he's lower on the list because I don't know that I want to play him that often. Also, he's not a hero. I don't care what they say. So Apocalypse, you can see he has only 2 cards that are not special cards, barring the wilds. But he has a lot of black on his cards, which means these are things you got to do. Like Survival of the Fittest, great. It's a move and attack. And then he does a damage to everything, including the other heroes, and then gets rid of all the civilians, and then turns the card face down so the next person can't use it. He has 3 of those. Here he gets 2 wild tokens, but then he turns the card face down so he doesn't share those with people. So even this wild doesn't get used. Here you must draw 2 cards and then turn the card face down. He's powerful. I mean, look at his stats. They're great. Look at all the wilds he has. But he doesn't work well in a team, which thematically makes a lot of sense. But also, thematically means I'm not so sure I want to use him that often because he just doesn't work with the other people that much. He's powerful, which has risen him above 19 other characters, but he's not going higher than that for me. We're going to start here by taking a look at number 60. So if you watched the last episode, we talked about Apocalypse, and I actually have Apocalypse and Legion next to each other for the same reason. Now, I do want to give the Legion cards some props. So every Legion card is a special ability, and you'll notice these are all the personalities in his head. The personality they're talking about, so there's Cindy, there's Susan and Sunshine, they're highlighted. I thought that was a nice, really cool touch for that. But the problem is all his cards are powerful, his special abilities, but they are powerfully bad also. Like each other hero, villain, and henchman takes double damage to your next turn. You hit an adjacent location. Each hero there takes 1 damage. You know, that's how his stuff is. Delay the next villain turn by a card. Great, but heroes must play their card randomly until the next villain turn. So his stuff's powerful, and yes, since you are picking the card to play, you're going to try to manipulate it so it doesn't affect you, but that's still kind of dangerous. So I've always thought Legion was kind of a funny thing, but he has heroes can freely exchange your action tokens between them. That's great. That one's positive, but for the most part, it's like, here's a little positive, here's a little negative. And he's pretty powerful in that regard. Now, I will say that his icons themselves, and that makes sense because Legion was never someone who was an overly powerful character. His stats aren't particularly great on the bottom of his cards. It's all about these interesting special abilities. But yeah, he's an interesting character to play. I don't want to do it all the time. And when you do play this, this is not a character you'd give to someone who's playing this for the first time. That would be insane, which Legion is. All right, 59, we got Shatterstar here. So Shatterstar has a lot I like that he has these 4 cards that are a movement and something else. And he has a decent amount of heroic stuff, not a ton of attack, but he has these really powerful attacks, but you have to discard a card to hit 3, split as you like, and you're in adjacent locations. That with a move is pretty good, but giving up that card can be pretty annoying. However, he does have the healing factor to draw 3 cards in his hand. So he's kind of, I'll play Shatterstar, even though I despise this character in the comics, but he requires a bit of a light touch, and he's fine. That's why he's here in this position. Hey, we're back to Alpha Flight. So now we have Snowbird. Now she's better than the last 2 Alpha Flight people we looked at. She has a decent icons on her cards, and she has 5 special cards. 2 of them, these are the kind of special cards I like a lot, because essentially these animal shapeshifting, it's a move plus 2 other things. Now that only works for Snowbird, but still, that's very simple. Her starting card is this mystical resistance. As long as this is face up, you can't be forced to play cards randomly. Fine, but that doesn't happen that often. Now, if you're playing against someone who might make you do that, you're playing against Mr. Sinister, maybe she's there, but that's a very, very singular thing. And then she is an Alpha Flight card, so the Alpha Flight characters all have this Alpha Flight card that gives them tokens for each face-up card, so they're going to get at least 1 and could get more, but man, these just don't work out well, especially since you don't start with them. And then this one here, as long as this card's face up, you get a wild token whenever one of your cards is turned face down. That's cool, but again, it needs to be fighting a villain who's actually going to be flipping cards face down. Yeah, she's not the best Alpha Flight character, but she's not the worst. For some reason, I've played a lot with Guardian. I've been playing a lot with the Alpha Flight characters, and I like him better than many of the others, mostly because his Alpha Flight card gives wild tokens. I think that's pretty solid. Here, he can give a wild token to another hero. That's pretty good. Here, he has an attack, plus attack against 2 different targets in your location, which can work pretty well, especially when you're taking out thugs, and don't take any damage to the beginning of your next turn. That mixed with some decent, jack of all trade stats. You can barely on the model see the Canadian flag on him. So this is another one that probably has to be painted. But yeah, because of his wilds, I put him a little bit above the other members in an Alpha Flight. Phantomax is kind of a weird character in the comics. He was built as an ultimate fighter, which I'm not seeing kind of come out here. His stats aren't particularly great. What you'll notice here is wilds. However, they're wilds at the cost of double tokens. You'll notice that none of his cards have 2 icons on them. His starting card is when the top card of the master plan is revealed, you can immediately move to an adjacent location. Not bad. It helps him avoid getting blown apart. And he can look at the top card of the master plan, put it on top, which is fine depending on when it's played. And then this one here, as long as it's face up at the end of every villain turn, you get 1 free heroic and 1 attack in the villain's location. That's interesting. It can work really well, but also it's blank at the bottom. So I think he's cool. Don't get me wrong. I don't mind having wilds and some decent specials. The problem is that those single icons keep him from rising higher on the list for me. And also kind of thematically, I was expecting him to be this amazing fighter, and he's not particularly. So, but he does get to stand on some cool wreckage here with his miniature, so there's that. Oh, I'm almost afeared to talk about Cable here because I know he's one of people's favorite characters both in the comic, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was very similar here in the game. And I think Cable's fine. Oh, again, one of my worries with him is he only has 1 card that has double icons on it, but he has 6 special cards. Discard a card, a little dangerous, but to get a double wild action, probably worth it. Letting everyone else draw a card and discard one kind of lets you kind of manipulate the game a bit. And then this techno-organic psychology where you have attack and draw till you have 3 cards in your hand. Plus, you'll notice he comes with 4 more wilds. So it's really hard to say that Cable is bad in any sort of way. It's just that single icons on the card makes me a little less, but man, I still throw him in a team. Cable's fine. Cable's cool. Also, he's really cool in the comics. All right, we're up to Polaris now. Very green, the cards. But yeah, she has green hair in the comics. She's a very straightforward one. I talk sometimes about characters that people should use who've never played the game before. She's definitely one of them. Has a nice spread of attack, heroic, movement, some doubles. This magnetic manipulation's a really nice card that lets you do 2 damage in your an adjacent location, giving you a lot of maneuverability, especially with a move on the card, and then 2 cards that keep her from taking any damage. She's just very straightforward and solid, and so if you're looking for, kind of an all-around person to add to a team, Polaris is very good in that regard. Here's where I feel some people might disagree, because here's my highest ranked member of Alpha Flight, and it's Sasquatch. Now, part of that is because, come on, it's a Sasquatch. Roar. Who's not going to like that? But also, sometimes I just want to take a tank, someone who can fight, and Sasquatch has that. A bunch of attack symbols. His Alpha Flight gives you an attack token for each face-up card, but 2 damage against a single target and 1 damage against 2 different targets. And this damage is combined with heroic, so he kind of does it all. Again, just like Polaris, Sasquatch is one of those characters that I might give to somebody who's new to the game because they're pretty easy to understand and play. I don't know that I'd put 2 of those characters in the same team, 2 all-around people. And again, if you're going to play Alpha Flight, you're probably best playing with multiple Alpha Flight people. But I found that the 3 that I've mentioned in this top 10 make a pretty solid team. Okay. Sorry, Alpha Flight. Fantastic Four, they're a real team. So they come with this Fantastic Four card, and when you play a teamwork card, and there's 2 teamwork cards in the deck, you're going to get to put a token on that card. Well, first you do all the actions on the card, which means the first one of these played does nothing. But after that, you get to use all the tokens on that card. And since there's 2 of these in a deck, you play with the Fantastic Four as a group, they're going to do well. So the Invisible Woman adds heroic and movement to that card. She also gets 2 wild tokens with an extra wild here, and as long as her starting card here, as long as this card's face up, she can choose not to take any damage until the beginning of her next turn, but then she has to play her card face down. And that's not as interesting to me as I wanted it to be. I like to take no damage, but playing your card face down is awful. And that's why she's the lowest of the Fantastic Four. But other than that, I mean, I have no complaints. I'll still play her. I mean, 4 double icon cards, the extra wild, 2 wild tokens, and then, of course, just being part of the Fantastic Four. So very, very good. And I would rather pick her over any of the members in Alpha Flight. Okay, the last one for today is Pixie. Now, Pixie has some pretty terrible attack. But, oh, look, though, she's a pixie. There's a reason she's not used in the comics that often. But she has a lot of symbols, and she's very heroic. And then she has some pretty cool special abilities. Here, teleporting, you have to move to another location. When I first saw that card, I was like, really? That doesn't sound good, you have to? Don't worry, it's fine. You want to jump around anyway. She can stun somebody, which I like these better when they're combined with a move. But since she's moving and she can have the teleporting spell and be all over the board, I don't mind those. And her other stun one is with a move. So she is much more useful. She's very annoying to the villain as a hero. And so if you're going to play with her, you're definitely going to bring someone like Sasquatch or Hulk or someone who has a bunch of attack, because she's not going to be bringing any of that. But other than that, I like her maneuverability a lot. Let's start with Warlock. Not as well known as a character. I mean, he has some very potent parts of some of the storylines, but he kind of shows up in and out. But Warlock here, pretty cool character in many ways. He has several double cards. He can get a token, so he's 5 special cards, which is nice. Get an attack token, and then exchange tokens with another hero in your location. Which is cool, not as necessary, I think, as it could be, but it's nice to have that. And even if you couldn't exchange the move, attack, and get an attack token, I'm pretty happy with that. Drawing a card, getting rid of a crisis token from your location or another hero in your location, that's pretty solid to have 2 of those in the mix. And then the card that he starts with here, where if it's face up, you ignore the first crisis token you get, that's pretty good. He's very specific. If you're fighting an enemy with crisis tokens, then you want to take Warlock, or at least if you want to have an easier time of it, because the fact that he can get rid of crisis tokens and he can ignore the first one he gets, that's pretty solid stuff. He also has a pretty funky looking miniature. I really like how Warlock looks, so there you go. Now we have Iceman First Class, which you'll notice I rank higher than the actual Iceman, even though I think I like the other Iceman's model better. The fact that he's throwing a snowball is pretty cool. I like this Iceman because he has a decent amount of attack, and his freeze tokens are pretty good. They don't stop the villain's bam, but they stop the villain from moving, and that's combined with a move and attack, so I like that combo. It's just a good combo card. Ice Slide is a little less exciting. It's funny, you know, thematically wise. You place a frozen token in a location, and the game comes with a few of them. And then you place that in heroes in that location can move without doing a move action, but it's gone at the end of your next turn. So it's a little more limiting than I would like it to be. He's also not particularly heroic, this Iceman. I guess he's more about fighting, but he has some decent movement. Wolfsbane's a character that's at this position on the list and higher than several other characters because I just like playing with her. I think she has some fun cards. So these Hyper Keen Senses, which is a wild at the bottom, which is pretty helpful. But if the villain ends their movement on your location, which is, you know, kind of a guess in many ways, although some villains are hunt somebody. You know, if she's a hunted person fighting Sabretooth or such, it's fantastic. But you can immediately move to an adjacent one and do a double attack there. If this works, it's just fun. I know it's not maybe uber powerful, but I like doing it. On the other hand, being able to move and defeat all the thugs at one location, that is a straight up power move. And then she has some double cards along with a few single cards. She's another one I think that's fun for people who don't play the game. You know, maybe they're new to the game. But I don't know. There's something about these 2 cards that feels good to play, and that's why I like them. Hey, Jubilee. I really like the character of Jubilee in the comics, and she has a nice, well-rounded theory, with the exception of attacking not a lot of icons, but she has these explosive light blasts, which let you do an attack against up to 3 different targets in your location, which can let her take out a bunch of thugs. And in fact, we just saw Wolfsbane, who can take out all the thugs, but she can take out 3 of them or take out one of them and do a damage to a henchman, or maybe even hit the villain and take out a couple thugs. It's a little more versatile. And then being able to ignore the effects of the next BAM is some pretty solid stuff that it also comes with a heroic symbol to give other players. So I don't know that she's an uber powerful person to play, but she's fun. Blink is one of my favorite characters from the comics, especially when she was with the team that jumped from dimension to dimension. Age of Apocalypse was fantastic. And Blink has the same exact special card where she can move to any location, then she can move any heroes to that location. That can be pretty powerful, especially you notice it's matched with all 4 symbols. She has 4 double cards, and I just like her. I think she's a pretty good character to have to a team. You'll probably want to throw in someone with some hefty attack on top of that. And the problem is, she's a little weak against villains who attack you as a group, and there are several of them like that. And that is maybe why she's not as powerful, because yes, she can jump, she can pull everybody in, you can do a lot of damage, and it's great if you're, once the villain's under pressure, she's one of the most powerful characters there is, because she can get everybody there, and then they can all punch that character. But she also has that vulnerability against the villains who hit everybody. All right, let's take a look now at Bishop, who for some reason has a bit of a manic grin on the model's face. Well, there was a period of time where he was a bit off, lulu. But so a lot of heroic actions on Bishop for sure. His starting hand card here, where if it's face up, he cannot take damage from adjacent locations. That's interesting, but kind of very specific. Again, though, when you look at the way that he can help people out, so if you're ever looking for a character who is great at heroic, he's one of the best in that regard. His energy absorptions, where he gets an attack token, which kind of buffs up his attack a lot, and then ignore a damage to the beginning of the next turn, that's not bad either. So he's a pretty solid all-around character, with the exception of he has pretty bad movement. So, well, him and Blink working together is a pretty good combo, I suppose. Or anybody with movement, Bishop is excellent at that. Now we have Domino. Another probability person, just has good luck. Domino needs more icons, I think, but she does have 3 extra wilds. And this is a really cool card. This +3 attack to a single villain or henchman in your location with a move on it. I enjoy that. She has 3 cards here that have to do with probability manipulation. So with these, if it's the last card, then overflow is ignored. Then BAM effects of henchmen are ignored. Then villains can't move. All very good, but they're also all very particular when they can be played. Usually you have a problem with one of those things in general. However, it does give you some versatility, and so she's a good person to put on a team. You're just going to want some people who have like some oomph. They're going to let her specials kind of cover and stop the villain, but you're going to need, and she also has one that can also hit the villain. So she's not terrible. She has that hammer that she can drop, but I would put her with some people who maybe have some move and attack and definitely some rescuing, because that's probably where she's weakest at the heroics. Strong Guy is one of my favorite characters in the Marvel Universe. I just love his sense of humor, but he has a unique ability where when he gets hit, he stores it up, but if he doesn't release it, it can give him like a heart attack. And that is used on his 4 cards. You'll notice that they're all the same card with a different symbol on each. This stops him from taking damage. For each damage that he would take, he gets an attack token instead. If this card's face up and he has 4 more action tokens, discard all your action tokens in your hand. So he's a push your luck character. When you get these tokens, usually you want to use them. I've had him do that. I've had the negative action happen a couple times on him because I start storing things up and I want to throw them all down at once. But you got to let off the energy. I think that's neat because from a thematic standpoint, that's just fun. Other than that, he's kind of around the board, not terribly heroic, a little bit of movement, a decent amount of attack, but it's all about getting those tokens, because if you get that attack, you can do some massive damage. You just got to be careful not to overload. Why, hello, Human Torch. The figure for him, all in orange. Although, again, I think he needs to be touched up a bit so that you can see the flames a little bit more. This is the second member of the Fantastic Four as we're going through. So far we've seen Invisible Woman, we've seen Human Torch now. With their marvelous teamwork cards, which let you put tokens, first you activate all the tokens on there, which means the first card you play, not that fantastic. But after that, you start putting tokens on there, and every time you play these cards, you get to use all the abilities on there. Which means if you have 3 of the Fantastic Four together, that can get pretty powerful as the game goes by. He also has this card here, his starting hand, which as long as this card is face up, he can treat heroics as attacks. Interesting, especially since he only has 3 heroics. But if you have a match with someone who else who's heroic, that makes that more powerful. And then Nova Flame. Of course, going Nova is the Human Torch's ultimate thing. Discard 1 card to do 2 damage to everything else in your location, but then get rid of all the people. I wish there was a bit more Nova. That's all. That's the only reason he wouldn't be higher. Because 2 damage is great, but if you have a villain going Nova, I want to do like 4 or 5. There is an attack on the card, and you'll notice he has several cards with double attacks. He's weak with heroics, pretty strong with attacking, and just kind of fun to play as part of the Fantastic Four. All right, Forge, the guy who can make all kinds of cool weapons. Not a lot of movement here. But what he does have, you'll notice he has a couple extra wilds. These Spirit Sight cards. Ho, ho, ho. Pick another location. You can use your heroics and attacks there. Any location. That's Spirit Sight. I call it snipering. That's pretty neat. And then as an intuitive genius, this lets you, for each of your heroic actions you can use to clear threats, you get to place 2. Which means Forge is probably the best person to clear threats in the game. Well, maybe there's one better one, but which we'll get to later on. But he's pretty solid, not to mention they're all here. Now, what you'd love to do is get a movement to have him move, put down 2, move, and put down another 2, if you can pull that off. And that makes him really powerful. Other than that, I think he's a solid all-around character, a little slow, but the fact that he can hit anyone on the board makes up for that. He almost made it into the top half, but still, 41 ain't bad. We're starting with Beast First Class here. And you can see that the regular Beast I have higher than this, but that's, hey, Beast First Class, he's one of the best characters. If you've never played the game before, he might be one of the first ones I hand you because he has everything. He has movement. He has some of the best rescuing people, the heroics in the game. He has these Star Athlete cards, which give you a symbol and then 2 more symbols. Pretty straightforward. And his Brilliant Student, fantastic. I do find it interesting. It's like, gain 1 of these tokens. Why not just give him a wild? But I get that wilds can be whatever. But still, you're getting 1 of these tokens and a move in heroics. That's just pretty good. And that's it. I mean, no weird things, nothing. He's just a solid, great character to take. We're going to continue on this trend with another great all-around character, Cyclops First Class. And again, regular Cyclops I have higher than this. But still, he's a little less straightforward than Beast, but he has Precision Blast, which I like. It's not as, we'll get to the other Cyclops, but if you watched the earlier lists, I mentioned Havoc had a special ability, and here it is, where Cyclops does 1 damage to everything else in the location except Havoc, because in this universe, Havoc and Cyclops can't hurt each other. So weird. This is a little bit of a dangerous card to play because you will hurt your own team with it. Well, it has heroics at the bottom. Cyclops here has a decent amount of heroics. His symbols are okay. There's nothing like super exciting about him. But again, he's just all around useful. Oddly enough, pound for pound, Marvel Girl's just better than Cyclops First Class. It's not even, you're always going to pick her first, I think, unless you want to play Cyclops. She is that same thing for adjacent locations, except that it's heroic or attacking in your or an adjacent location. And she has 4 of these. They all have a different symbol on the bottom, one of them being wild, a double attack, double heroics, move and heroics, move and attack. She's just pretty solid. It's hard to find any, she has no drawback. Cyclops has do 1 damage to everything, but also your heroes. Marvel Girl's like, I will be more careful about that and just do what I want to do. A very, very solid character. And in fact, if I was making this list again, I might move her even higher. And right above Marvel Girl is Jean Grey. So there's a couple things to talk about here. First of all, it's impressive that Jean Grey is the first person, for me, I was surprised by this, is the first person here at number 37 from the core set. So the core set is not, like usually you get core sets of games, you're like, meh, and the expansions have the good stuff. All the core set are 37 or above, so I like that. Secondly, here she is right next to Marvel Girl, and if you compare their cards, they're very similar with the stats. Jean Grey is slightly better. Jean Grey's major telekinesis, which I guess she grew up and got better at it, where she gets 2 things and you split it in your adjacent locations. That's great. Telepathies, which are both wild, let you swap the previous hero card in the storyline with any other hero card in the storyline, so she gets a wild and pretty much any 2 things she wants. Pretty solid. Although I do like Marvel Girl's abilities and that they're 4 the same thing, I think Jean Grey just kind of edges her out. Growing up brings that experience, but it's close. I wonder, can you use them in the same team? That'd be weird. But you can, because it happened in the comics. And now we have another one from the core box, and the first person that was announced, like, hey, you can be a villain or a hero. And Magneto certainly personifies that in the comic books. Definitely has been on both sides about equally. So Magneto has some pretty strong strength. And he has these magnetognexus, whatever, throws metal at people, which is 3 hits split as you like to your and adjacent locations. Great card. It's blank at the bottom. I'm never a big fan of that, but in this case, I feel like it comes out to be even. Also, treating all symbols as wilds, that's pretty cool. Although it is weird that they gave him a wild at the bottom, so it could be cool. It just means the 2 symbols, and you should always play it after 2, are wild. And here you can use moves as wilds. And then it gives you a move here at the bottom, which I thought was weird. They didn't just give another wild here, but whatever. You play this after someone who has a bunch of moves, or at least 1 move, and that's still pretty cool. I like Magneto. He's an all-around, interesting bad guy, but he's also a pretty solid good guy and can do some of the best damage in the game. Sorry, Magneto, though. Namor kind of is better than that, although I'll tell you, Namor and Magneto make a great team. So Namor has great cards. Double heroics, double fight, double move, moving heroics. And then an attack plus 2 attack in any location. Oh, what a fantastic card. And then you can discard a hero or a thug, a civilian or a thug from your location and from each adjacent location. This one I don't know about. It's an interesting card, but you have to realize it says discard. You're not rescuing, you're not defeating anyone, they're just discarding. So he's great against overflows, but he's not particular great for helping you finish missions. But if the missions are done, then he's a beast, and he's kind of a beast anyway. Man, I really like Namor. And we should also point out that he has a fantastic model. Really like his model. I think it's one of the best ones, or at least for me. I think it's really cool. We're continuing on with villains turned heroes to, oh man, she's gonna look great when she's painted. Spiral. Look at all those swords. That's pretty cool. So Spiral has great action cards. The spell dance cards, so she has 3 of them. So when you play it, it says for each spell dance in a storyline, you can draw a card, gain a token, or fight against a thug or a henchman in your location. That's great. It's okay when you play it the first time. The second time, no, you get it twice, and the third time, you get it 3 times. I like that. But the teleport away gives you a token. Now, it says as long as this card's face up, when the top card of the master plan is revealed, you can immediately discard an action token to move all heroes in your location to another one. You start with this card, which is pretty fantastic, and it's just a failsafe. Now, unfortunately, it tempts you to use that wild token. But if she's there with a bunch of people, the villain comes in, does 1 damage, you can be like, nah, and you're just out of there. So that combined with her cool miniature, yeah, I like Spiral. The second of 4 Wolverines in the set, we have Logan, who almost, in a sense, feels unnecessary in this set. As long as his card's face up, he can ignore 1 damage, fine. He has great attack. There's a lot of attacks. Movement, heroics are okay. And then his fighting cards are pretty basic. It's an attack, draw a card. Not terribly shabby, not necessarily helpful to your teammates. And again, I have him on the list because if you're playing with people you don't know, you're like, here, play Logan, play him. I almost felt like putting him lower because while I like him, he's fine. He almost feels unnecessary. I feel like they threw him in the Days of Future Past set just so that, you know, that there was a hero in that set. We didn't need another Wolverine, and the other 2 Wolverines are better, but taking all that out of the equation just by himself, I feel this is where he fits, because if you give me this character to play, I'm like, yeah, I got it. Not a lot of thought into it. I'm going to go around and slash stuff, but it works. And yet another villain in this top one here who turned good, and that's Marrow. So Marrow has, in a starting hand card, she has dual hearts, like Doctor Who. And if it's face up and she's about to be KO'd, she can flip this card face down to draw a card. that's okay. I think I'd rather have the prevent 1 damage. But I do like her bone weapon. She can move and then do 2 damage in her or adjacent locations. And then bone armor is, they're basically, if you're about to take damage, they take a damage instead. I like that. Other than that, she has pretty good movement, heroics, and fighting. But I don't know. Maybe I just like bone armor that much. And maybe that's why she's in this spot here. She also, like I said, has a really cool miniature here, coming in with the double daggers. I always found her a bit one note in the comics, but she's a good hero. Dupe, dupe, doopity dupe. Well, you know, when I first heard that Dupe was in this set, I was like, really? Deadpool style character. But Dupe is pretty powerful. Now, he has no double icon cards, but his stuff's so awesome because at the end of your turn, swap this card with any hero card in the storyline. He has 3 of those. So when he's done, he gives basically 2 icons to the next person. That's amazing. And he has 3 of these cards in the deck. Move to a location and do double wilds. Works. And as long as this card is face up in the storyline, which is in his starting hand, he gets a wild token whenever he's KO'd. Now, probably you don't want to be KO'd that often, but that's a nice extra thing. And as long as this card's face up in the storyline, if another hero does 2 or more actions in your location, they get a wild token. That's less useful, just because it's so specific. They have to be in your location and do double things. However, a couple turns in the game, it might pull off. He also is an extra wild, so he's a little wild of a character to play, but he's fun, and I like him. He's a weird character in the comics, but in this game he's a little weird too, but still lots of fun to play. Let's start with one of my top characters in the Marvel Universe, and that's Kitty Pryde. Cool miniature here where she's coming through the wall, and she comes with Lockheed, another cool miniature who somehow is suspended on flame. Just a great little model. So you'll notice she has a ton of special cards, and so her starting special card, which you'll play probably right away, you put Lockheed in play in your location or an adjacent one, and as long as it's face up, you can use your move to move Lockheed instead. Okay, so that's pretty cool. If it gets turned face down, it's problematic because Lockheed gets stuck. A problem is, though, you'll notice all her special cards, a damage, 2 damage where Lockheed is. Here, you can't take any damage. These don't affect Lockheed, but you get some tokens instead, heroic tokens, that's good. These are great cards, by the way. Here you get stuff that Lockheed's in. Here you get stuff that Lockheed's in. Here you can move with other heroes. So she has 2 things. The phasing, not taking damage, or move with other heroes, and stuff where Lockheed is at. Here is my concern with her and why she's not like in my top 5, because when I read this I was like, yes! But it's essentially like she is a clone of sorts. So she doesn't have a ton of special abilities. She has not a ton of icons. She's not super powerful. Her and Lockheed together can be powerful, but it's almost as if she's split into 2. It's not that Lockheed is doing extra damage. It's that he is doing damage instead of her. So that's not as cool as it could be if she was moving and then Lockheed was also blasting enemies. I'd be much more on board with that. But as it is, I feel like, again, it's still fun to play. It's still neat to use. It's a fun person to play, but I felt a little limited, and I just felt like I'm either using Kitty or I'm using Lockheed. I'm not really using both, or I'm using both and they're just not as powerful. So that's why she's not higher, but she's still a lot of fun to play. Here we have another character from the base game, Mystique, who was a villain, but in this case is a hero. Mystique has 2 cards that start in her starting hand. And these are both metamorph cards. On the next villain turn, you can redirect any damage to a henchman or thugs in your location. I don't know why that amuses me so much, but this alone puts her high on my list because I think that's hilarious to take damage that the enemy's going to do to me and make it go into a small person instead. She also has these Spy Master cards, which basically the next Master Card plan can't add stuff to your location or one of 2 adjacent ones, so she can stop overflows. That on top of, she has decent movement and great attack. Not very strong heroics, but you can't have everything. Well, at least she can't have everything. I still think she's worth playing as a hero. A lot of fun. Okay, now we have Boom Boom. Terrible name, don't like the character, but she likes to throw, like, bombs. In fact, she comes with some bomb tokens, and she can place these tokens in her location or adjacent one at the start of the next villain turn, remove the token, do damage to everything else in that location, and discard all the people there. Now, unlike some of the cards where people show up, this happens at the start of a turn. So just don't make sure there's no people there, and it's a really great way to clear things out. And I don't know why, I just think that it's a fun to put a bomb. And then she also just has this meltdown, which does 2 damage on a single target in an adjacent location, which when the villain's under pressure, being able to move and then hit adjacent, a range attack is pretty solid. As you can see, she's pretty good move. Attack's not great. I mean, well, when you count these, her attack is pretty good. Heroics is pretty low, but she's fun to use with the bombs. Thus, she's higher on my list. Dazzler, who can shoot light at things, and she's a really good singer. Feels like an anime character crossed into the X-Men universe. You know what, though? I like her, because she has 2 cards that are basically 2 sides of the coin, where she gets heroic tokens equal to the number of thugs in a location, and attack tokens equal to the number of citizens in that location. Man, I like that one. Those work really well. You go to the right spot at the right time, and you have a move on the cards, so you can get there. Her attack, meh. Her heroics, okay. Her move is very, very good. But then with the tokens, again, there definitely could be arguments made that several of the characters I'm talking about in this particular instance aren't very powerful, but they're just fun for me to play, and that's where Dazzler's at. Now we come to when I have my daughter paint these, the very first model I'm going to have her paint, because I love the Thing so much. The Thing. All right, so the Thing starts with rock-like skin, where basically he can ignore 1 damage on a villain's turn. Not very unique. There's a lot of characters that have that. But I also want you to notice the Thing has a lot of attack power. He is possibly the strongest or one of the strongest characters in the game, especially when his special cards are taken into account. He's part of the Fantastic Four. He is number 3 on my favorite characters from the Fantastic Four, the 3rd highest. I mean, he's actually number 2. He has the teamwork cards. So the teamwork cards, you use everything that's on the Fantastic Four card, which at the beginning there's nothing, but then you add tokens to it, which makes it stronger. So he works well with the Fantastic Four. The clobbering time, being one of my favorite phrases in the Marvel Universe, that does 2 and then 2 against a different target. So there's not many times you get to do a full 2 damage to 2 different characters, but try the Thing against the Sinister Six. Anyhow, so that, just with powerful cards, he's just fun. You bring it in the Thing, and you know the villain's shaking in their boots at least a little. Oh man, do I like Gambit. He's just a fun one to mess around with. So he has decent icons. Lots of good move, okay heroics, decent fighting. And Master Thief gives him a token, a wild token, and an action token of your choice from each other hero. Okay, that's kind of terrible, but you know what? You're all on the same team. And then he can throw an action token to do 3 damage to an adjacent location. Very thematic, very fun. I like tokens. Any character that uses tokens is okay by me. And the fact that he can throw them at an adjacent location, I just love that idea. So it's really cool and he's fun to play with. So very close to the Thing, we have Colossus, who's not part of the Fantastic Four, but I ranked him a little higher than the Thing. So his starting hand, organic steel body, you can ignore 1 damage. Yeah, a lot of people have that. It's his fastball special, so he's not as strong as the Thing. He's pretty strong, but has, not quite as strong. But the fastball special, where you pick a hero from your location to an adjacent location, they show their hands and deal as much damage as is shown at the bottom of their cards. Oh my word. Now he does this with Wolverine in the comics all the time. He's done it with a few other characters, but with Wolverine, that's his main person. But you can set up such an amazing play. You could do 4, 5 damage with a single attack, and it feels so satisfying that I had to put him on the list because I get just such a joy out of doing that. Fastball special, baby. Next, we have Multiple Man, who is another one of my favorite characters from the comics, and I don't know how powerful he is. I've never been able to match him to get him to do that fantastic, but he's so much fun. Notice that every single one of his cards has 2 symbols. But this card, what you start with, as long as it's face up, you can place a dupe token in your location. So these are dupe tokens. You get several of them. They take place of a regular person that you'd rescue. You can use these actions, heroic and attack actions, as if you were in a dupe's location. That's pretty awesome. So you can drop dupes everywhere. Now, they do definitely make the possibility of overflows happen. So you have to keep that in mind, and you can spread them with this. You can move them in different locations, and then you can just pull them off the board and draw a card for each token that's removed. So if you're not feeling really good, you can pull them off, and then dupes assemble, which lets every dupe do one free heroic or attack action, and then they get removed off the board. If you have the patience to pull that off. Now, I've had some very mad games of this because this gets turned over instantly. So it's a big weakness. If multiple man's card is turned over, especially when it happens early, it can be very devastating to him. And it actually makes him a lot less fun to play. But if that's not turned over, then he's a fantastic character, and the dupes are just running all over the board. And it's silly fun, and I love it. Good old Hank McCoy here, the Beast. I like him better than the first class version. Pretty simple, easy to play, has not a ton of attack, although he has 4 cards that are all move and attack. He has a lot of double icon cards. He also has a lot of heroics. So the Beast here is pretty strong with heroics, some of the best in the game. And man, he's just a lot of fun to play with. The fact that you can use heroics as wilds with 2 of his cards, and he can fill back up to 3 cards if he needs to. Very easy to play, great for first-time players, and again, that makes sense because he comes in the core box, but just a lot of fun. And then finally, just outside the top 20, we have Hope Summers. Now, Hope Summers has a lot of good abilities. She has some strength, okay movement, not great movement, okay movement, okay heroics, and she has these special cards. So she has Denying here. The next Master Plan card is played face down. Then remove the next one out of play. I don't know how often I want to use that. It does give you some breathing room near the end of the game, but it does speed the game up. It's easy. Embracing Destinies here. She can discard a card to just clear a threat location. Now, the first time she does this, she has to discard 2 cards. But after that, you can, it's just so easy to get rid of threats. When she's in a game, so if you're playing with her, you almost should take people who have less heroics. You pair her up with a couple people who are good at fighting. Let her handle the threats. Or I guess even if they're just, any threat, really, it doesn't matter. It's such an interesting character. I think she's the best at getting rid of threats. The problem is she's not... She kind of is a very dangerous, I've been talking a lot about characters. If it's your first game to give the person, not Hope Summers, for sure. Because she has unchecked power in a sense, which again makes sense thematically, and I like how they fit that in. Cool action sequence character here. I really like this. And she's a really neat character, but be careful when using her. Let's start with Archangel. So Archangel, who has such a cool mini. Man, I really like how Archangel looks. So better than Angel, and they have some similarities. Although, again, the grown-up versions of First Class seem to be usually better than the actual First Class ones. Archangel just has some great movement. I mean, that's going to make sense. Someone who can fly around is going to have great movement. And he just has a couple things here. He can't take damage to the beginning of his next turn. All right, that's pretty good. And then this techno-organic wings. And I can't tell you how useful these cards are when you're fighting a villain, because you're able to move up and then hit 3 damage in an adjacent location. That combined with 4 cards that do double, and then just great movement. Now, Archangel is great when you mix him with someone who can do a lot of damage, because they're going to use the moves of Archangel with the damage. But you do that, and you're going to have a good day. Number 19 here is Cyclops. So Cyclops from the core set, again, I think it's pretty exciting that 4 of the core set has made it into the top 20, so he's the lowest of that. He has pretty decent stats across the board, nothing amazing, except I really do like these double heroic cards, and he has 2 of them. I like his Optic Blast. Cyclops is good in the early game because he's going to hit, and then he does damage in both adjacent locations. And if you use Cyclops, he can help you finish off the thugs fairly quickly. But these leadership cards that give a wild token to another hero, I don't hate them either. So that combination, Cyclops really is a good teammate-oriented character. So yeah, he's shooting cool laser beams. You can't paint laser beams. Maybe I could put a little laser in him. That's not going to happen. But yeah, he's just a good character all around, and I like having him on my teams. Okay, the only silver character in the game. Look, it's Silver Surfer. Such a cool thing. This is unpainted. He comes like this. I just think that's neat. If you know anything about my play style in games, I tend to like characters who can move really fast. Okay, so Silver Surfer starts with Cosmic Awareness. If this card's face up, one of your attack or heroic action can be done in any location, and it's wild. You start with that. Pretty nice, but oh my word, this near immortality. If this is face up, you're drawing 2 cards. Now, again, that's going to make the game go pretty quickly, but holy moly, that makes him powerful. Teleport, go to any location with 2 wilds. And then if you're not in the villain's starting location, he can replace your location with another not in play, which means you can take one that has a great ending reaction that has, so there's a few locations that have they start with more henchmen and civilians at them, but you can pick one of those, set it aside, that has a great ending thing, clear a smaller one, and then stick this there. I don't know, I just really get a kick out of that. Also, look at all the wilds he has. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wilds. Now, he doesn't have a ton of attack or heroic stuff, and his movement seems slow, but that's because he can do the teleport. He just feels powerful, and I like people who feel powerful, so yay, Silver Surfer. The last member of the Fantastic Four here, Mr. Fantastic. It is his group that he started. So Mr. Fantastic starts with a pretty cool card, Plasticity. If it's face up, he can use a heroic or a fighting in an adjacent location. That's because of his long arms. By the way, what a cool miniature, right? I like this. Nice and spindly and long. A little freaky if you think about it, but hey, it's cool. He also has the teamwork cards that all the Fantastic Four have, where the first one pretty much does nothing, except adds a token to the card, but after that you can use all the tokens on the card. And man, oh man, he adds a wild, which is pretty neat, and a move. Then Super Genius, which is amazing, because it says you can treat all tokens as wilds, and then he has 2 tokens at the bottom. So that's 2 wilds plus whatever else. Then he has 4 other cards with double tokens, and then the other 2 are heroic. Man, he's just fantastic. No pun intended. Okay, well, Wolverine. This is the 3rd Wolverine. We have 1 Wolverine left after this. This is the one that's in the core set. Very straightforward. Healing factor, if he has less than 3 cards, you always get to draw a card. Great. Tons of attack power on these adamantium claws, which do something else, and then a double attack. Doesn't really share it with other people, but since he has 4 cards with 2 icons, not as big of a deal here. So he's a strong 16 for me. He's very good on attack, pretty good on kind of everything else. The movement's okay, but he has some, he's enough icons there to heal other people, and some solid specials, especially with the healing factor. Again, a really easy one, and it makes sense that he was in the core set. There could be an argument made, I suppose, that the next person here, which is X-23, is a Wolverine, but no, I think she's her own character now. She is a female clone of Wolverine, but has become her own character. She's actually a model I don't like, because she's like bursting out of fire. And it's like, why? She doesn't have fire powers. She has claws and healing like Wolverine. It's a weird miniature. I don't really like that one. I think it might be my least favorite miniature. But that being said, she has healing factor, which she starts with, just like Wolverine. But this doubling the power on the previous hero card in the storyline, you play her after someone with a lot of strength, and that's pretty amazing. And then for each heroic action you perform, give a token from the pool to any hero, which means you're going to do at least 1, and you might do more, which is why I like her better than Wolverine. She's more maneuverable, and her special powers seem awesome. So I really like her, other than her miniature. Then we have Weapon X here. Now, Weapon X is kind of very unnecessary. Again, I don't think this set needed 4 Wolverines. So he's here. I like him a little better than Wolverine, because yarg, look at all the attack he has. He has the most attack in the game. So, I mean, I can't argue that. It's just fun to go around and smash stuff. You want to smash, you want to kill, you want to pummel, you're fighting a villain, you're fighting someone with a lot of henchmen, then you better take Weapon X. So it makes a lot of sense. Again, I get why he's in this game. Wolverine is very popular, but I do find it unfortunate he's not that different than, well, the Wolverine we just saw. I would never use both in the same game. Or would I? There might be a case that Captain Britain is boring, because all his special cards are the same, and yet I really like using him. First of all, he has some he has some okay attack, but his movement, it's pretty solid. I really like how fast he can move. He has a little bit of this, his icons are good, but all his special cards are the same. Draw a card, or get a combination of 2 tokens. That's great. The combinations of tokens or draw a card, both of those things are good. It works in every situation, and it's easy. So there you go. Yay, Captain Britain. You might be boring, at least, from an outside perspective, but in the game, I'm pretty happy to play you. I'm still finding it a little bit amusing how I tend to like the younger versions less than the mature versions of all the different characters. And Storm, who here is defined by her hair only, Storm Mohawk, I find that interesting. I like her, but you'll notice Storm hasn't shown up yet. Storm is in the top 10. But that being said, I really do like this character. Lots of icons all across the board. She has this Storm starting card hand. If it's face up, you ignore the first crisis token you get. That's pretty good, especially considering how many villains in this set have crisis tokens. But this preemptive strike where you hit 3 different targets in your location makes her one of the best. Just in the beginning of the game, she could take thugs out like all tomorrow. Move there, take them out. Move there, take them out. The move's on the card, and there's other moves. She has a little bit of everything straight across the board. So, pretty cool character. Storm, surname Mohawk. Okay, so before we hit the top 10, we have another villain turned hero, Emma Frost, who's probably been a hero longer than she's been a villain at this point. And yet, man, I don't get it. Okay, so I like her a lot, but there seems to be a thematic mismatch here. She's one of the best heroic characters in the game. I would not call Emma Frost heroic ever, but she has a lot of heroic stuff, but it's her special cards. So she has organic diamond form, which she can turn into, and you basically draw a card if you have less than 3 and you can't take damage. Great. But these telepath, where you can use the symbols at the bottom of the 2 previous cards in front of you instead of 1, whew, I mean, just think of these 2 cards. It doesn't matter. You're playing that, you're going bum, 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 bum. That's fantastic. And it's a wild at the bottom of those. Those are some of my favorite cards in the entire game. I just like using her for that reason. And even though it doesn't make sense thematically, I like having characters who are super heroic. Number 10 is Mirage. Wow, so Danny in the comics is not particularly a character that I've ever been, I don't know a whole lot about her. She lost her powers during the No More Mutants era. Anyway, but in this game, she's amazing. All right, so lots of icons across the board. She looks good here. She has, not great movement. There's some pretty poor movement, but everything else is fine. But it's her specials. The Neural Arrow. You can use your attack actions in adjacent locations. Fantastic, and you have 2 of them. Here, relocate people. Hey, I want to rescue some citizens. You know what? I'll stick them in my same spot and then free them. And then resist death. Anyone in your location can't be hit until the next turn. And they're also wilds at the bottom of these. This is great. This is fun and fantastic. I like Mirage a lot. And yet there's still 9 more. In the top 10, we have 2 people from the core set. So first we have Storm, who I like better than Storm Mohawk. But Storm has a lot of great icons. Again, a nice spread. Good, great movement. Okay, rescuing people. Heroic. And decent fighting. But it's her powers. This 2 fighting in any location, that's insanely good. And then relocate any heroes to different locations. That's also amazing. You can move people around the board. When I first played her, I was like, oh my word, power creep in the X-Men. But it's not power creep, it's just Storm. She is fantastic, and I'll be glad to put her on a team anytime. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Professor X is here. Really like his miniature here where he's riding in a wheelchair. That's a neat thing. But man, are you kidding? How good is Professor X? The last person here from the core set. So his movement which surprisingly is not that fantastic. I mean, that's not surprisingly. His heroic, though, is amazing. And his attacking, I guess I should say his movement is better than I would assume it to be. But he has 6 special cards. These 2 let you give tokens to another hero. 2 of them. And this one, you can treat symbols as wilds. And you have one of those on the bottom of the card. That's fantastic. Telepathy here, you can swap any number of cards from your hand with their cards in the storyline. So if you're playing with Professor X, throw your best stuff out because he's going to let you get it back. And then turn thugs into civilians, that's kind of cute, it's neat. And sometimes you don't want that to happen, but in some scenarios, and there's some villains out there that throw a lot of thugs at you, he's really powerful. And then 2 icons, 2 icons, 2 icons, 2 icons. I mean, are we kidding? This is Professor X. I really like it. Okay, I'll admit it, I am attracted to sheer power, and that is what Phoenix has. Now, if you've been watching through this list, you'll see I can't stand blank bottoms of the cards. But the fact is, Phoenix Uncanny Power, which is in your starting hand, says that when it's in the storyline, heroes can ignore and skip her cards. Oh my word, they must ignore them. Okay, so that means they're not going to get these wilds that she gives. Fine, but they're still working together, and she is throwing wilds out. And she can give a wild token to the pool. She can delay the villain. She can give it. Here's another token to a character. But look at this, 5 wilds. Then you discard all cards from your hand to the bottom of your deck. Okay, so you're killing yourself. But are you kidding me? This is absolutely cool. I didn't put her as number 1 because yes, this card can get the uncanny power can be turned over. And then these bottoms, and then she's almost a liability, right? It's not so fantastic at that point in time. But up to that point, oh my word, she's amazing. Real quick, before I get into Firestorm, I should mention I really like the Phoenix model too. And then the Firestorm model here, she's my next character, this. Now Firestorm's an interesting one. It might surprise you that she's so high up. It surprised me, actually. I don't know what it is. There's nothing really spectacular about her, but I think she's really solid. For a character who's not necessarily speedy, she has some really good movement compared to most of the game. And her attacking and heroics aren't bad because she has a lot of symbols. These move and do 2 heroics. They're just really useful. First card of the game, if I get one of those, I'm playing it because I'm going to move and throw that down. I give the move to the next person, and we already have a chance to finish off an event usually. And then move and do 2 damage against a single target in your location. I don't know. And I mean, coupled, I like the model and everything too. So I also like the fact that her special cards are different color. I don't know why that's a thing. But yeah, I like her. She just somehow shot all the way up here to number 6. All right, Sunspot here, hitting number 5. Sunspot also has some amazing movement, some of the best movement in the game. He has movement on he does have movement on every card. He's always moving. Actually, I really like Sunspot in the comics too. But then, other than that, you're like, he doesn't have a lot. You're right. He has 1 and 2, 2 fighting and 1 heroic. It's his special abilities. He has 6 special abilities. Getting a wild token, and he can turn action tokens that he has into wilds. And he has 3 of those cards. At the end of his turn, he gets a movement or a heroic or action token for each different location you occupied this turn. So if you can find a way to get him to move, well, you're going to move him twice. He's going to move, he gets 2 tokens. I don't know, I like that combo. He's not particularly powerful, I don't think. But he's fun to use. And you get to do different things with him, and I really enjoy it. And he always gives your teammates move. I will say he's not necessarily, when you play with him, you better play with some people who have a lot of icons at the bottom of their cards. But despite all that, I find using these specials to be a lot of fun. Now, interestingly enough, Deadpool is at the very bottom of my list. He's number 80, and yet Lady Deadpool here is number 4. And you know why? Because she's Deadpool without the chaos. All her cards have special abilities. Rescue someone at your location. Do 3 against a single target. Any special effects on the next Master Plan card have no effect on her. As long as this card's face up in the storyline, if you have less than 3 cards, draw a card. Gain wild token. On your next turn, you play your card randomly. Who cares? They're all amazing. Move to any location with civilians. Rescue civilian and defeat all the thugs there. Are you kidding me? These are all amazing. They're all amazing. She's a fantastic character, and so you get to play with the coolness of Deadpool, but without the stupidity. So she's not perfect. The bottom of all her cards are single icons, so she's not really helping the next person out tremendously. But she's going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting herself, so it's hard to say that I'm not going to really want to use her on a team. So I don't think I would still buy the Deadpool set just to get her, since I don't like the Deadpool villain, and the Bob villain's okay, and Bob hero and the Deadpool hero are way down on this list. But maybe you could trade someone else for it and say, you don't want Lady Deadpool, right? I'll give you Gwenpool for her. Maybe that would work. I don't know. I suspect this character is going to be a lot of people's favorites. I mean, first of all, Nightcrawler, and man, I particularly like this model a lot with the BAMF. Just a cool thing. But the thing about Nightcrawler is that when I first got him, I was like, oh man, you must move to another location. You must. He has mostly single icons. Here's a couple doubles, but the rest are single. You must move, but you can bring other people with you on 4 of those. And then I figured out, hey, you must move. Who cares? You probably want to move anyway. You can move all over the place. You want to hit that bad guy in the last turn who's running around and you seem like, oh, we can't get to him. Nightcrawler can get to him. The person before Nightcrawler sets him up with a double attack, and you know for sure that Nightcrawler can get there. He can, because he can get to anywhere on the board every single time. The best in the game. Amazing movement. And he's going to jump, punch, 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 punch. Or save, 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 save. Fantastic. He has no move icons. And unless you're worrying about the person who's coming after you, it doesn't matter. I love it. But there's still a couple more. Number 2 is Magic. So Magic, her stats are not, she has really good attack stats. We'll come back to that. And her move stats are pretty solid. Heroic, not so much, but that's her. But she has these move to any location. That's why I gave her a higher move. She can go anywhere with these 2 cards and then punch. Amazing. Just like Nightcrawler, but it's only on 2 of her cards. But then she has the Soul Sword, which does 2 attack and does an extra damage to any villain, henchman, or thug you deal any damage to this turn. So you know that guy who turns thugs into double damage? She takes out 2 of them. The villain, she's doing 3 damage to him. Plus, it's just that it's 2 icons for the next character. And then the Mystical Armor, which is her starting card. Basically, she can, if this card's face up, if you have any crisis tokens, you can get rid of 1. And again, crisis tokens are a pain in the neck. So Magic is absolutely fantastic. But she's not number 1. Who could it be? I feel a little dirty here in the villain being my number 1 hero. But Dr. Doom, it is him. So, oh my word. Okay, so first of all, his stats are nothing to go home about. Doesn't have a lot of movement. 1 heroic, big deal, and 4 attack. But look at all those wilds. But it's not those wilds. Is it possibly Pain is for lesser men, the card he starts with? So each damage that he takes, he gets a token? No, that's good. It's this minus the power. This is insane. You can use the symbols on the bottom of the 3 previous cards in the storyline instead of only the previous one. Then you turn them face down. So you go here, and I'll be like, I would like to use these 3 cards. Bam, 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 bam. Or here. Bam, 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 bam. And then you turn them face down. Now, this could be problematic, and I do grant that you might be playing with some characters. You don't want to use this too early in the game because you might turn down their starting abilities. You don't want to do that. And you might not want to turn something that needs to be face up. But don't put Dr. Doom on those teams in. Just give him some people with great stats, and you are going to wreck shop with Dr. Doom. He thinks he's the best? It's because in this game, in my opinion, he is. You made it to the end. You get a cookie or something. That was a lot. That was me talking a lot. I'm done talking about X-Men United for a while. But it is a fantastic game. I like it a lot. So those are my favorite heroes. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks to Chris for all the editing. Lots of stuff going on in this video. Thank you all for watching it. And for those of you who watch it twice, why did you do such a thing? Anyway, X-Men United. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell. And you've been watching my favorite heroes from that game on the Dice Tower.